So we're saving this for posterity. That's good. So my name's Professor Kaiserman. I teach in the English department. And my colleagues, Professor Newcomer and Professor Dimock, are here today. And we're going to present on why we think majoring in English is a good idea. And I'd like to start off with just a brief presentation about some of the ideas that are pretty prevalent about the English major that are, I think, mistaken. And they apply to other majors as well. But I think nonetheless would be useful. So there's a myth that says that humanities majors earn lower salaries and find less rewarding work than majors in STEM fields. So like really, if you want to, make money and make something of yourself, you need to go in the sciences or technology, engineering, or math. But the numbers really don't show that. Majoring in English probably won't make you as wealthy as like a successful surgeon. But the median salary of an English major is pretty comparable to other fields. So it says here that the median salary is $53,000 for English majors, which puts you, within spitting distance of biology and environmental science and above psychology. And that by age 40, most liberal art degree holders have actually surpassed STEM degree holders in average annual salary. So if you're concerned about your financial future and that's what's holding you back from majoring in the humanities or expressing your interest in things like English, philosophy, history, theater, etc., that's really an unfounded worry, right? We have this stereotype as the English major as future barista, but actually, according to labor statistics, you're actually more likely to end up a medical doctor with a degree in English than you are than to be a barista. So another myth is that employers don't care about the liberal arts skills of critical thinking, writing, emotional intelligence, or cognitive flexibility. But in fact, it's these skills that are actually the most sought after. And in fact, they're the least automated, right? Many careers are going to be basically replaced by robots and programs in the future. But the ability to critically think and show emotional intelligence and cognitive flexibility are all things that you develop as an English major, and these things really can't be reproduced by a machine. So it actually gives you the flexibility to succeed in the world. Another myth is, and this is that humanities majors have low unemployment rates because they're just so desperate for anything that they could get. But in fact, it's just they're least likely to be underemployed than other folks because they can use the skills that they gain in English to be successful. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those skills are in a little bit. Okay. So humanities majors struggle to find jobs. And I think this myth has prevalence because it doesn't seem to be, a direct correlation between job or degree and job. But in fact, most of those don't have direct correlations. Most people majoring in biology don't end up to be biologists. So in fact, they actually have employment rates which are similar or in fact better than some of their other fields. So it actually isn't that hard to get a degree, get a job with an English degree. Majors in English and other humanities disciplines actually do best in going for postgraduate degrees. So for law school, MCAT, GRE, GMAT, all those post SAT kind of standardized exams, which are used as weeding sources for graduate schools. Philosophy, literature, and history have the highest average scores. So they're really preparing you to do well in a number of different fields if that's where you're seeking to go. Okay, so employers have sort of decided that there's kind of 6 skills that people need. And so this material comes from a book called A Whole New Mind and about why right-brainers or creative types will rule the future. And so these are skills that Daniel H. Pink, a psychologist and business consultant, has come up with. And they're really all skills that we work on in English. So the first thing is design. And design says, can you make something for someone else? And in English, as some of you are probably familiar from English 101, you learn about rhetoric and you learn about the art of persuasion and you learn about thinking about audiences and what they need. So although you might not be learning something as specific as graphic design, you are learning about how to address audience needs. Story. One of the skills that will keep people employed is the ability to tell a story. And certainly we read stories all day and long in in an English degree. And many degrees feature a creative writing component. And so people actually practice writing stories and not just becoming familiar with them. The next skill is symphony, which has to do working well with others. Now, a lot of majors work on this soft skill. But it's also something that we do in English in the form of sharing our writing, and both creative and analytic, and working with audiences. Sorry about the phone call. That now will be preserved for posterity as well. Um, and also through the work on student publications. So one of the things that we have here, which is really special, is an award-winning student magazine called Cul-de-sac that's put together by English students every year, currently being put together right now, in fact. So those are ways in which you learn to work together. Another skill that we have is empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel for others, and studies have shown time and time again that literature and reading literature helps you see things from other people's points of view, and that this helps you understand things. Play, can you make it fun? Literature is all about enjoyment and figuring out what will be fun for readers, what will keep people hooked. And so that's a skill that you also learn in the humanities and in English specifically. And then finally is meaning. And I really wish someone would get it. And the idea of meaning has to do with, the ability to make significance of something, to understand what is going on there. And, one of the central tenets of the English major is interpreting texts and making sense of it. So those are the skills that we learn in English, and one of the ways that it helps us in the professional fields outside of school. And so I'm happy to answer any questions about that. But I would like to kick it over to my colleague, Professor Newcomer. And what Professor Newcomer and Professor Dimock are going to do are give you a little bit more of an insight into what our major classes look like. I'm sure many of you have taken English 101 or 103, and those are our composition classes that we offer. And they're good classes, but they aren't necessarily representative of what we actually do as English majors. Those are more to prepare you for writing in college and professional settings, a very important skill, and one which the three of us are very dedicated to. But it's also not a sense of like, well, what happens in American Lit 2? English 101 and English 103 don't give us that sense. So without further ado, Professor Newcomer.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here today. Let me briefly see here if I can share my screen. Okay. All right, so I'm going to echo a lot of what Professor Kaiserman just said, but kind of talking about it through the lens of creative writing specifically, which is what I teach in addition to 101 and some literature classes. And the first thing that I really want to pick up on is that idea of telling stories, and the idea that everything is a narrative, right? Everything is a story. And so the clothes that I chose today, the backdrop that you may have selected, is Dr. Dimock has a lovely backdrop with lots of art. All of those things are telling a story, just like we might read in a book or watch on our television screen. And so the English major and creative writing, I think in its own specific way, really help us understand, assess, and create narratives. And if we can do that, we're not going to be outshone by robots, as everybody's talking about, and we can really do anything that we want to. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit just about what our creative writing classes are at COC, who can take them, what we do, and some of the benefits of taking them. And so I'm happy to answer any questions about this. I have my email at the end of the slides. I'll put it in the chat if you want course numbers in more detail. But broadly, we offer classes that are focused just on poetry, just on creative nonfiction, just on short fiction, the literary magazine publishing class that puts out our award-winning literary journal that Professor Kaiserman brought up. And then we have an intro to creative writing class that combines poetry, nonfiction, and fiction, kind of just lets you dip your toes in a little bit of each if you want to try things out. And so there's a wide range of these classes. And so what we do in these classes, we do a lot of different things, but one thing I always want to stress is just having fun and playing, right? So experimenting, being silly, trying out new things. I will often, if I'm in the physical classroom, the first day I come in and I put a bunch of the furniture on top of each other. I don't know if I should be saying this on record, I don't hurt it. But I put a lot of the furniture up on top of each other and do a weird sculpture. And then I ask students to describe it without using any of the actual nouns for the things that I've stacked, like desk and chair and so on. And so it's weird and it's silly, but that's something that I always try and tap into when I'm teaching creative writing. As Professor Kaiserman mentioned about humanities degrees in the English major more broadly, creative writing classes really stress collaboration and effective communication. So we work in small groups, we work as a large group to share our work and talk about it. Students will individually conference with the professor often. And so you have to really hone this ability to give effective feedback and take feedback effectively. We also emphasize developing strong craft skills. So like, how do you create an effective plot? What makes an effective beginning to a story? How do you think about line breaks in poetry? And if a lot of these words sound like jibber jabber as I'm throwing them out, that's one of the things that you learn in a creative writing class is what do those things mean? What are the tools that you use to write creatively? Because it's a lot easier, or I shouldn't say easier because I don't really know, but it's more obvious in other kinds of art making classes. It's like, here's a paintbrush, here's a canvas, right? Here are tubes of paint. And in creative writing, one of the things that we think about is how writing can also be an art form and what tools you have to work with when you are making this kind of art, because it's a little more subtle. And so things like metaphors and line breaks and word choice and all of that becomes important. But we also, you also learn to read more effectively in a creative writing class. And you learn to read in a different way than you do in a literature class or even in a class like English 101, because you think about, how do I read as a writer? What do I pay attention to? What can I learn from that? And so taking a creative writing class, even if you don't want to, make your living or keep writing beyond the class, it adds another tool to your reading toolbox because you're thinking about how to read in this different way. And we also talk about research skills. Creative writers need to research things, but research in a creative writing class is a little different and pretty fun, because research might be like going outside and smelling a flower so that you can more accurately describe it. But it might also be using the library databases to find out, historical information. So it can be a lot of different things. And so again, it widens your research skills. Process over product, by which I mean, like, I don't really grade people on if I like their work, because that's just me and it's subjective. In creative writing, it's more about how you experiment, what you try, retry and try again. It's about the process of writing and reading, and not, you have to be a perfect writer, which is a thing that doesn't exist, to take a class. And so that's some of my philosophy, and it's a philosophy that I know is shared, with some minor variation amongst my colleagues who also teach creative writing. Who are creative writing classes for? Obviously, we're here hoping to convince you all to become English majors. And then if you become an English major, you can take creative writing classes as part of that degree. If you transfer a lot of four-year institutions, you can actually major specifically in creative writing or just English more broadly. But I also just want to acknowledge that creative writing classes at COC, they're for anybody who's interested. They are not just for people who already write. They're not just for people who want to be novelists or publish poets, although it's of course for those people too. It really is anybody who's interested, whatever your skill set, whether you're taking this because you want to go on and get a degree in creative writing, whether you're an English major, but you're more focused on something else and you just kind of want to try it out, or if you're not an English major and you're just interested in trying your hand at this, they are for everybody. And taking these classes has a bunch of personal and professional benefits, even if you don't want to make your living as a writer. So I encourage anybody who's interested, try it out. It's a lot of fun. And it does have a lot of broader benefits beyond the immediate class. And so I think I've already said a lot of these things, and so has Professor Kaiserman, but I just want to highlight what are some benefits of creative writing classes as part of the English major more broadly. And so, like I said, it improves your spoken and written communication in just another facet, right? So does English 101, so does English 103, so do literature classes in their own way. But having to talk to other people about their work and talk to other people about your work really helps you become an effective communicator. Like I said before, the ability to give constructive feedback in a kind and compassionate way, and also to be able to accept that feedback and think about what about it is useful to you, what you need to set aside. That's a really valuable skill. It's hard to take feedback. It's hard for me, and I've been doing it for a long time. So taking these classes where you have to sit with that process, you can see how this can apply to so many personal and professional settings outside the bound of the class. Collaboration skills and community building. Sometimes I will ask students to work together to complete a story, which always irritates everyone because you want to be like, no, it's my work. But forcing you to do that gets you thinking in a different way. And creative writing classes are really all about community. We really stress that at the beginning of the semester, that we are building a creative community where we all support each other. And so we think about and we talk about together, how can we build a positive community in the classroom? Professor Kaiserman talked about empathy. That's true in all English classes and in creative writing. You learn to have empathy for others, also empathy for yourself. Thinking about what do I feel comfortable sharing? What do I need to set aside for now to protect my own mental health? So there's a lot of emphasis on developing compassion and empathy. Obviously promoting self-expression, self-awareness, improving problem-solving skills. I'm really big on constraint. So being like, here's a weird picture, write a story based on it. And that can be hard because you're like, but I had this other idea for a story. But having to work within those constraints fuels your creativity. And just last really quickly, creative writing cultivates your curiosity and attentiveness. I make students carry around a notebook and go out into the world, and that's a little harder right now, but we modify it and jot things down. And it gets you attuned, just paying attention to your surroundings, making observations, and having fun. So jumping to my next slide really briefly here, I just want to emphasize that creative writing classes are really, really fun. They're fun to teach, they're fun to take, and they're a really wonderful part of what an English major can offer. So just lastly, I don't know if you can see this, I'll put it in the chat if it's blocked out, but I have my email address here. If you want to follow up with any questions about specific classes or anything that I said, feel free to reach out with me. I love talking about creative writing and English majors, and I'd be happy to talk to you. And with that, I will stop sharing and turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Professor Dimock, who's going to talk about literature classes specifically.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I want to just thank everybody for coming in and learning more about the English major here. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Not, I'll just keep projecting. So I'm Dr. Chase Dimock, and just a little bit about me. I have a PhD from the University of Illinois in comparative and world literature. And that's one of my big passions, is teaching literature from across the globe, from different cultures, different backgrounds, and to understand diverse stories from diverse people around the world. I'm also a writer myself. Also, so is Dr. Newcomer over there as well. In fact, my first book just came out last year. It's a book of animal poetry called Sentinel Species. So not only are we instructors of writing and literature, but we're also creators ourselves. So I'm going to try to screen share. This is always death when you try. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. Share. Let's see. Let's see, is that working for y'all? Okay, great. So I wanted to just focus on one big idea. I've got one slide, one thesis statement about studying literature. And that's that studying literature is more than just reading stories, right? You kind of piece that part together. When I say that I teach literature, that, yeah, you're going to read some stories. And absolutely, you will read stories in this class. But it's a little bit more than just reading a story in of itself to be entertained or to analyze, oh, what do the characters do or the plot? It goes deeper than that. It goes into the question of why we produce literature. Why has man been writing stories since the very beginning of such thing as civilization? And why do all cultures all across the world, everywhere you go, the one thing that we all have in common, no matter where we're from, is we have stories and we have mythologies, and they inform us of the world. They inform us of our values, our beliefs, our ideals, our struggles, our fears, all of these things. So the argument I want to make is that in addition to learning about really cool stories, being entertained, enthralled, having your mind open, just enjoying a story in of itself, it's also about developing cultural literacy, and that understanding people's stories and how our personal stories intersect and connect us and can build bridges across nations, cultures, and backgrounds. So I love teaching world literature. In our department, we have both survey courses, British 1 and 2, where you learn all the way from Beowulf to, well, Brexit, I guess. And then American literature 1 to 2, where again, 1 starts with with indigenous literatures and mythologies, and 2 takes us all the way up to the 21st century. I also like to teach the world literature classes, which takes us from literally the earliest stories ever recorded, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is literally just a bunch of dashes and dots on a clay tablet that we figured out is actually the very first ever superhero story, and then takes us all the way to the 21st century with World Lit 2. We also offer literature classes that are themed around different cultures, backgrounds, and genres. So you have options like women's literature, African-American literature, multicultural literature, also sci-fi we offer sometimes. There's the Shakespeare class, and yes, you will learn a little bit of Shakespeare along the way, but don't worry. I make Shakespeare accessible and fun and relevant to us today. So, because that's what's important, is understanding how a literary history knowledge gives us an understanding of the world in its past and the world in its presence. And cultural literacy is a very important thing to develop in this day and age, because as Dr. Kaiserman was saying earlier, a humanities major can be robot proof. A lot of skills that we learn today may be done by a robot in 3, 5, 10 years. But what the robot isn't going to change is what they're not going to replace is about being human, understanding what it means to be a human. And fundamental to being a human is understanding our stories. Literally, the stories that we study, the stories we learn in school, the stories that inform us and inspire us. But also it's about understanding story in a broader level. What is an individual person's story? What is their background? Where do they come from? What informs the way they see the world? A robot doesn't understand that. Humans do. And studying literature along with creative writing with Dr. Newcomer and studying rhetoric allows us to better understand each other's stories. And we live in a diverse, globalized world here, where no matter what job you have, it doesn't have to be necessarily a creative job or a humanities job, but any job you have, you're going to be working with diverse people from around the world. LA is like my my freshman musicology professor said, it's a cultural paella. And you have to understand everybody's stories that you work with in order to be able to work with them. So whether you're going to go into a creative field or whether you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or any of these other fields, you have to understand the creative world, the creative economy, that it's full of people's stories. And with that said, I actually want to invite a friend of mine over here to talk for a minute. Come on here. So this is Salvador Rios, and he is a TV producer. He works right now for the Fuse channel and working on shows like Struggle Gourmet, Made from Scratch, and Like, Share, Demolo. He's been working in the industry for 20 years now on everything from Nickelodeon Slime Time Live to the Jerry Springer Show. So Salvador Rios, I want you to answer this question for me. As a TV producer, why would you be interested in hiring somebody with a background in English?
A background in English is super, super important because part of what we do as producers, I mean, a lot of what we do as producers is writing. There's writing in every phase of production: pre-production, production, and post-production. So for pre-production, whenever we get an idea or a subject matter that we want to cover, it takes hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually produce a show. So with that money, we have to have a clear idea of what it is that we're going to be capturing and what we want to get in the field. So writing is critical. So in pre-production, we have to formulate how our stories are going to take place from beginning, middle, and end, and understanding a basic structure of how stories are told is incredibly important, because you need to know that as a basic, on a basic level in order to work in this part of the industry. And then when you take a show from pre-production into production, you're continuing to write, because when you're in the field capturing your stories, things can change. So you have to understand how you're going to then creatively tell the story in a way that that is true to the moment that you're capturing. And again, in post-production, we work with editors, and we work with other departments in post-production, and we have to keep the communication going. So when we're taking our field footage to our editors, we have to give them basically an outline and sort of a script to go off of for them to understand where we're headed with our stories. And somebody in my position as a producer, we have to be the one person who will be able to carry that story from beginning, middle, and end all the way through. So having an understanding in English is really, really important, and it doesn't matter what field you go into. And it sounds crazy, since I'm a television producer talking about TV, and I work in documentaries, but even in documentaries, that is a fundamental importance, is knowing basic English and writing skills, storytelling.
So it's not just proofreading that we need to do, but it's about understanding people's stories, and that's the crux of a documentary.
Absolutely, yeah. Our subject matters. The best documentaries for me, and this is what I've kind of fallen into, are the documentaries that tell a slice of a human story. People who are willing to open up and share their personal, history and their personal struggles, and humanizing their stories. And through that, you need empathy as a producer. You need to understand, or at least try to understand, where these people are coming from and how to connect. Connecting is just incredibly important as a producer, but also behind the lens, we have to think as the audience. How is the audience going to relate to what it is that we're seeing? So
what you're saying is that taking these rhetoric classes, these creative writing courses, and literature courses essentially build up our story skills, both on the formal level of writing, constructing, organizing, but then on the deeper psychological, human, empathetic level, where we understand people and then understand how then in the moment, 'cause when you're doing those reality shows, you're filming live and you got to be able to figure out what's the story live with the camera right there. So you have to be an at the moment improv story maker.
Yeah, yeah. I also do acting, and I also do improv. And with English and understanding the basic storytelling, how to tell basic stories, that you can take what you've learned and apply it to really anything in front of the camera, behind the camera. And what's great about it, and what I love about what Professor Newsom said, was that, I'm sorry, Professor Newcomer said that, what you learn inspires creativity and curiosity. Curiosity is so important, especially when you're looking for your next project and when you're looking for your next subject. Everything that we do has a basis in curiosity and how the world works and how people are related to each other and the relationships between cultures, and people in our own neighborhoods. So yeah, what everyone is saying in this meeting is really inspiring and really, really cool, because I'm kind of separated from it a little bit, being in my field, but I love hearing creatives talk about, how they're inspired and how they can continue to inspire other people with something as simple as basic English storytelling, and storytelling classes. Like it's really cool, because it's all art. We're all connected as creatives, and that kind of is what connects us all.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your expertise, and kind of it verifies the argument I want to make, which is that English is not just about proofreading. It's not just about where to put a semicolon, although we will teach you that. It's about building cultural literacy and creative abilities, which in this new era, the creative economy, that is what makes you successful. That's going to make you robot proof, whether you want to go into TV or you want to go into other fields. It's about understanding people's stories. So I'm going to bounce this back to our host, but thank you for listening to us.
So I think, we've talked about this a little bit, but if we just wanted to share with the people watching what your favorite class to teach in the English department is. We might have already hinted at it, and then I'll share mine. But Caitlin, if you wanted to go first, what's your favorite class to teach? Not that you have any favorites, you love them all equally, I know, but
yeah, no, this is legitimately a really, really hard question, everyone. So can I pick two?
I'm going to pick two. So yeah, pick
okay.
two.
I like to push back against constraints, right? I talked about that. So the two creative writing classes that I teach most routinely, and so therefore they're my favorite. I'm going to be honest, like when I teach the others more often, they'll probably become my favorites too. I just love teaching creative writing. But English 105, which is Intro to Creative Writing, and that's the one I talked about earlier, that surveys 3 major genres. So it looks at poetry, creative nonfiction, and short fiction. And the reason I love that class is because it is like a sampler. So we get to kind of do a little bit of each, and that's really fun because students come in from all different backgrounds. Like some of them have never written anything creatively, or some of them come in and I'm like, I'm a poet, I don't do anything else, or I write novels, and that's all I do. And then the class immediately, no matter how you come in, pushes everybody outside of their comfort zone. Because I've never had a student, and this doesn't apply to myself either, who comes in and is like, I have already written a whole bunch in all 3 of these genres and feel really confident about them. Never happens. And so that class is fun because we're all in it together, and we kind of ride this wave of sometimes we're feeling like, oh, I'm kind of more confident and I can share my expertise. And sometimes we're feeling in that role of beginner, and we just kind of all embrace it. And we could also get to see the connections between the genres. So we start thinking about like, how did what I learned in our poetry unit connect to this nonfiction essay about, you know, my grandma's cooking and the birds in my backyard? Like, how do those things connect? And then how can, you know, what I think about in that essay fuel a fictional story that I write? So that class is really fun for those reasons. And then my other favorite is English 109, which is the short fiction class. I'm teaching it right now. And that class is really cool, almost for opposite reasons, because instead of doing a survey, we get to take a deep dive into short fiction. So it's short stories, and we really think about all of these little nitty gritty aspects of how you write a story. And I don't know if this is going to come through, but and I know it's backwards. I teach this amazing book. It's called Wonder Book by Jeff Vandermeer, and it's like $15. It's not expensive. It's the only book, so cheap class. But it is the coolest book. It's got all these really weird pictures. It's got all of these, you know, diagrams. It's really great if you're a visual learner. And I love this book, and I love teaching the class because we just look at art and then we write stories about it. And, you know, we do creative experiments every week where you're just writing short little things based on really weird prompts. And it's kooky and it's weird and it's challenging and it's fun, and I absolutely adore it. All right. Hopefully that wasn't too long-winded. I really like teaching creative writing. All right.
Thank you.
Why don't you jump in? I'm done.
Well, I can jump in if you want. So I'm also going to break some rules like Dr. Newcomer just did, and I want to talk about two classes, but I'll be quick. So from my background in comparative and world literature, my favorite class to teach is World Literature 1, which takes you from the very beginnings of ancient literature into the Middle Ages, Renaissance era. So we got to cover, you know, about the 4,000 years of literature across all around the globe in 16 weeks. Sounds daunting, but trust me, I won't hit you with too much to read. But what I love to do with this class is theme it around heroes and what's called the hero's journey, or the monomyth. The idea that all cultures around the world have hero stories where a leader, a king, a visionary, a warrior, a mother, a priestess, a goddess, whoever it is, stands up and leads their culture and embodies their values and beliefs and goes on a journey. And that the great Professor Campbell came up with the idea that all of these stories have common elements about how the hero develops and grows in their skills and their maturity and learns values and goes off into the unknown and brings back wisdom, brings back something for the community, and creates a better society for themselves. That all around the world we have these stories, and that this connects us from the earliest one we have, the Epic of Gilgamesh from ancient Sumeria, written 6,000 years ago. We start with that one, but you're going to be able to see in that story inflections of the superheroes we have today, of Superman and Batman and Star Wars. When George Lucas wrote Star Wars, he was totally fanboying out about Dr. Campbell's monomyth and used the hero's journey. So if you want to understand superhero narratives, if you want to understand why do we love heroes, it's in our DNA as human beings. And so we'll do the Epic of Gilgamesh, we'll do samurai stories from medieval Japan, we'll do Hindu mythology with Rama, we'll go all around the world. And by the way, that's all Ghostbusters stuff in the background. So one of the great things about being an English major, you can let your nerd flag fly. Yes, we're going to have Shakespeare, but trust me, you'll enjoy it. But we're nerds here. We're going to have fun with this. So anyway, also I wanted to bring up my poetry class, Introduction to Poetry 263, that I'm teaching this semester. It's so exciting. It's my lifeblood right now because I get to do new creative stuff with it. And it's basically just teaching you basics of poetry, interpreting, understanding, analyzing, appreciating poetry. But as you can see, I like not just going through dusty old books of ancient literature, although I love that. But what I love to do is apply it to today. So poetry, I'm a published poet, and I'm also a publisher of poetry, and I run a literary magazine. And I like to emphasize poetry as a living, vital art form today. And what I love about it is so democratic. Anybody can write it. Anybody is allowed to. And with the internet, anybody can publish it. And I think we've seen how vital poetry is today to our society. When we see young poets like Amanda Gorman at the inauguration and at the Super Bowl started with a poem this year. Isn't that amazing? So it tells us that poetry matters. And my class emphasizes that poetry is alive and vital and speaks to us. So we're doing a project where my students are actually helping me do readings and interviews that we're taping on Zoom of living writers. My students are also going to look at literary magazines and write reviews, book reviews that could actually get published and help the writers that they love, help them sell their books and promote themselves. And that's what I want to encourage, is that we're not just reading old dusty books in a corner, we are participating in the culture of today. And that being a creative writer, being a literature major, is about participating and making culture and making a difference today. So, and I'll knock it over to Dr. Kaiserman.
Thanks. So I don't know why I said name your favorite class. We all are going to name two. So name your two favorite classes. So my two favorite classes are really based in my academic background. My training and my doctorate degree was in post 45 American literature, and I focus on the intersection of literature and media. So it's no surprise that my two favorite classes are English 135, Film and Lit, and English 261, which is American Lit 2. So English 135, which I'm offering this summer, is a class on adaptation. And my goal for that class is really to get beyond the simple idea that the book is always better. That's not true, A, and B, it's not that interesting of a question. So I ask questions of like how adaptation works. Why do people adapt works to begin with? Who is the adapter? It's an open question. Is it the writer? Is it the director? Is it the actors? How audiences understand adaptation. After all, not all audiences know they're watching an adaptation or know the original work. So that influences how they understand things. And then when do adaptations occur, and how does that take place? So the things that we look at is, like everything from Jane Austen to Batman. So we look, and I switch up the texts all the time. So we might look at something like Easy A or Clueless, which are really adaptations of The Scarlet Letter and Emma. So they're these classic works turned into teen comedies. Or we'll even look at novelizations, which are, when the movie becomes a book. And what does that mean for cultural production? So this summer, we're going to look at The Virgin Suicides, some recent adaptations of Emily Dickinson. So how do you adapt a poem, or in this case, maybe a poet? We're going to look at Batman, and then just a category of weird stuff at the end, stuff that sort of an adaptation, but is kind of unusual. And then I really like American Lit 2, which is from the Civil War forward, and I really weight it towards the kind of contemporary period. And so we learn about realism, naturalism, modernism, and postmodernism. And that's just a lot of fun for me, and share, what I spent, 7 years learning about, and I can distill it for you in 16 weeks. So those are the things that I really enjoy teaching. And I thought we'd open it now. If there are any questions, you can ask questions of all of us, of one of us, sort of specific. You can unmic, or sorry, you can unmute and use your microphone. There we go. You're all unmiked now, I guess. I have a degree in English, believe it. Or you can use, the chat feature, and we'd be happy to take any questions or comments that you might have.